Okay, welcome back to School of Calisthenics. This is the second part of our blog on pistol squats. So in the first part, we looked at ankle range of movement and the ability to create more dorsiflexion to get a better body position so we can distribute our weight over the base of support in the bottom portion of the pistol. Now the second thing that people often find quite hard is what's happening around their hip. Now that could be because it's quite difficult to hold the non-stance leg up and keep the hip flexor feels like it's short, tight, gets cramped, or we might struggle with hamstring range of movement and we can't actually straighten the leg out. Often it's a pair of those two things playing nicely together which causes a problem. So let's have a look at Jacko's movement. We can sort of get an idea what we're talking about. So the arms can still come out for some counterbalance. As he drops into the pistol squat, this leg here is then going to have to work quite hard in the hip flexors and in the knee to try and keep that leg straight. If we can't keep that knee straight, we're going to hit the ground with the foot, and equally often if the hip flexor is tight or weak, it's not going to be able to clear the ground, so the foot's just going to drop down. The biggest thing people often find is cramps up and starts to get pretty niggly. So I'm now going to let Jacko drive out of that bottom position. I held him there for a while. So that's the focus, guys. To get some corrective work done in there, what we're going to need to do is mobilize the hip, put a little bit more range in the hamstring, and see if we can find that superior position a little bit easier. I personally find that these are starting to become more relevant if I'm trying to put more reps together. The ankle range of movement is great to get into one rep, and we're going to need that obviously for the rest of them, but it's this one that starts to get tired, particularly for me in the hip flexor, if I'm going to try and put a set of 10 together. The first target for our hip mobility is going to be the anterior hip, so we're going to look at a TFL, which is this guy up in here, and we're going to look at the rec fem and the quadriceps as well. Now there's some interesting stuff around whether we've got tightness, which can make this quite difficult and cause that cramping sensation, but it can also be combined with some weakness. Even though often people have got tight hip flexors, they're not always that strong, so it could be something combined with those, but we're going to focus our attention on the mobility side of things. Now we've got the foam roller for the quads, which is a bigger muscle, but we're going to use a hard hockey ball to get into this TFL. The principles of the foam roller are the same. Just got to try and hunt around, find the sore point of the muscle. When you find it, relax, sink around the object that you're rolling on and allow it to just chill there for a minute or two, just working out those tight points, and that's going to help to take some tension out of the muscle. And with the hips in terms of our pistol squats, it really helps in decreasing the tension and fatigue in the muscle. So this is our TFL, guys. We've got the hockey ball just sitting in. If I was to show you on the hip here, is to find a bony point of your hip on top. Just below that, you're going to find a fleshy pocket of muscle. That's where we're aiming the target of the hockey ball in this position, and just spend a bit of time hunting around to see what you can find. So the next focus is going to be on the quadriceps. One of those muscles that we're talking about in there, which we're going to try and hit using the foam roll technique here, is the rectus femoris. Now the rec fem's job is to hip flex and extend the knee. The rest of the quadriceps, their real focus is just on knee extension, whereas because of the pistol squat shape we're trying to make, because we have to flex that hip pretty much fully and keep the knee out, the rec fem's in a super shortened position, and that's where we're going to try and give it a little bit of special attention. Now that runs down the middle of the quad, so we can spend a bit of time hunting around there, but we still want to work left to right, starting to roll across that. Again, find the tight point, relax, and we can start to get some bonus features on here. If we start to find the sore point, then Jacko can flex his heel or his knee, bringing the heel towards the bum and then back out. And again, if he needs a bit more assistance, we can start to put some pressure down to start to really pull that muscle through the tight point and get rid of some of that tension. So we've removed some tension from the quads and the hip flexors using the self-massage work. Now we want to start to put a little bit of length in there by using some stretching techniques. So Jacko's going to go into a lunge shape. And then from here, we're just going to keep this front leg vertical. Now the back toe is going to be on the ground, and a lot of people get this stretch wrong because they just arch and lean forwards into it. What we're going to try and do is keep a straight line from shoulder all the way down to the knee. Now the job here is to try and get the bum underneath. So the same as our hollow body position or our hollow rocks, we're trying to posterior tilt. Imagine there's a bowl of water on the hip, and then we're going to try and tip water out of the back of that bowl. So you do that by squeezing the bum. That's going to put a little bit more some more stretch onto the rec fem, and we can hang out there for sort of 30 seconds to a couple of minutes depending on how tight we are. Now we can go level 2, which is really going to target that rec fem as we talked about before. So Jacko can use a box, he can jack his toes up, and remember we talked about the rec fem being a hip flexor and knee extensor. So in this position, what we're going to try and do is by creating that posterior tilt with the glutes, tucking the bum up underneath and having the knee into flexion, we're really putting that rec fem onto a decent, nice, long stretch, trying to get some more extensibility and more range of movement in those joints. We can hang out there. We can spend a bit of time just starting to let that sit through. So if we want to go to level 3, guys, we can use a band. What this is going to do is create a little bit of anterior distraction onto or pull onto the joint, and again, just to really help get that femur into a good position and put a little bit more stress or tension through the hip flexors and rec fem musculature to start to help to get some more elongation, increase range of movement, take out some tension, and we are in a better position for our pistols. So we're going to talk about the hamstring as a broad complex. There's a few muscles in there which we would be aware of, but we can start to just target some general tightness in the muscle, again using a hard ball. Now the hamstring is a big muscle, and some of the tightness that we need to get into sits pretty deep in the muscle. So having a harder ball is much more effective. So Jacko goes and sits on it, putting body weight down on top. It's a big muscle, it's all the way down the back of the leg, so we can hunt around from right on your sitting bones and just on the pelvis all the way down towards the back of the knee. Now when he finds a sore point, what he's going to do is put the pressure on, and then we're going to start to work through some reps of trying to straighten the leg. So this now starts to look like our pistol squat position. Again, what we talked about before, the hamstring has got 2 main jobs that we're kind of interested in this position. One of them is some hip extension quality, but the major one is going to be this knee flexion. So if we're finding that we're getting into this pistol squat position, we just can't really get the leg straight, it could be because we've got some tightness in the hamstring. This is going to help to take some of it out.
So if we're going to go into a hamstring stretch now, and the best way to go into a hamstring stretch when you're working specifically for your pistol squats is like so.
Alright, thanks for that valuable contribution. So we're going to start to get into a hamstring mobility stretch. So again, if we get into this kind of shape, we're starting to again look like what we're trying to do in a pistol. So we're going to keep the knee directly above the hip. Loads of people cheat on hamstring stretches because they're tight, and one of the things that it'll do is let this knee drop away, and they're like, oh yeah, great, I've got great range of movement. Not true. Knee needs to stay over the hip, and then we can start to worry about how much range we've got. The other one is this leg should be straight. If we let this leg bend or it's in a funny position, it's just creating less demand on this hamstring. It creates a little bit more space around the pelvis, so we can start to then give ourselves a false sense of hamstring range of movement. So leg straight, knee directly over the hip. You can hold on to the back of the leg. If you want to go super technical, what's going to happen is Jacko's going to take that hand around the outside, grab on the back of the knee. It helps to keep the knee in a good position, straighten that through. And if you want to go level 2, you're going to pull that toe down as well. You might find that creates a little bit more too much tension, so you can drop that toe out if you need to. Play around with that, guys, 30 seconds to a minute. The other one that's quite nice to do on this is put some reps in. So if you actually go through 8 reps, 2-second hold, really work hard and try and straighten the leg at that end range of movement. That's going to help us again to get a little bit more range of movement through that hamstring. Okay, so the last part of the equation we're going to look at is strength. We've covered mobility. This kind of comes into a stability strength kind of conundrum because we need both if we're going to be able to do a pistol squat. So we're going to start to just look at an easy progression that you can use to build it up, but it really links in what we've talked around about the range of movement, but it still keeps it progressive. So we're going to use a single leg pistol squat. Basically, Jacko's just put some boxes or some weights there. This could be a box or anything. Essentially, he's giving himself a little bit of support in that deep squat position that we looked at around a calf range of movement particularly. So he's going to line his feet up, he's going to shift weight over. We're going to really work hard to try and maintain this leg position that we just worked so hard on with the range of movement exercises, and then from there, can he shift weight over and drive up? Now the real key thing for having stability and strength together is joint alignment. So when we watch this knee when he goes up, as he drives through, it looks pretty good, it stays tracking in line with roughly the second toe. But what's going to cause a real major issue for you with your pistols is if you can't control that knee position, and when you try and push up, knee drops out of alignment, all of a sudden we're not pushing through a stable foundation, and we're just going to lose strength and stability at the same time. So really work hard on keeping that knee over. If you struggle to do that, the problem lies mainly up in here, potentially with some strength. So that's going to be an area you need to focus, is getting some more glute strength and stability. So that's working the way up. We can drop those plates out and you can start to work from different ranges until hopefully you're all the way down and you can actually get up from the ground. Progressively more difficult. Okay, looking good. So if we can push out of the movement, that's a concentric movement taken care of. Now the deceleration is actually the more difficult bit in a pistol squat because you're having to adjust your center of mass over base of support into quite a challenging deep position. So as Jacko drops himself into a ready position. The leg comes out, he's using his hands again for support. As he comes down, he's having to then make sure that knee's going forward over the toes, creating that angle of dorsiflexion that we talked about, but also then keeping strong in the hips and the core to create some tension that it doesn't just topple over backwards. So as he sits in, knee still tracks in line, and then he drives out, and I'm going to push this away and get him to go a full range rep for us. So he drops in, the knees come in nice and straight over the toes, this opposite side leg is staying straight, and he drives back out of that position. And there we have it, guys. A complete movement which requires total lower body mobility, stability, and a strength component. 1 rep's easy, work up towards 10, and then tell us how you feel.